Hello again, and welcome to Storytime with Oliver Covington. Today's story is called Eunice, and it was originally published in my book Cat Tales. Now before we begin, a bit of a trigger warning. This story is a bit violent and deals with home invasion, so bear that in mind. Also, please like and subscribe if you have a mind to. Enjoy. Eunice Shinkick was in the process of making a cup of tea when she heard it. The Twinings Earl Grey tea bag was waiting patiently in the white porcelain teacup that she used every single day since she was 11 years old and first was invited to have tea with her grandma Yetta nearly 70 years ago. She turned off the fire under the screaming tea kettle and walked across the linoleum checkerboard kitchen floor to the back door. She drew back the once white curtain on the door and spied a scrawny, obviously starving, black cat standing on the porch railing meowing. Its yellow eyes stared right at her and the meows grew louder. Eunice's heart sank. She thought out loud to herself, "Oh, the poor dear." Eunice carefully undid the locks on the back door and swung the door open with a loud creak. The cat jumped down from the railing and stood right next to the screen door. It sat down and looked Eunice right in the eyes as it meowed. Eunice walked over to the fridge and pulled out the container of milk. She retrieved a saucer from the drain board next to the sink and poured some of the milk into it. She carefully carried the saucer to the back door, carefully pushed open the back door, and carefully stepped out onto the porch. She placed the saucer down in front of the cat. The cat stood, stretched and sniffed the milk before beginning to lap at it hungrily. Eunice watched it for a few minutes, and then went back inside to finally have her cup of tea. After that first time, the cat returned dutifully every day around Eunice's tea time, and every day Eunice would bring it out a saucer of milk. She thought to herself that the next time she was in the pack and save, she would pick up a few cans of food for it. She couldn't have it in the house, but she wouldn't mind having it as a porch friend, especially now that the weather was getting nicer, and she might take tea out there. After 2 weeks, the cat and Eunice had become friends. She would feed it every day and the cat would sit with her on the porch, sometimes even allowing her to pet it, albeit briefly. On a particularly drizzly Tuesday, Eunice was about to make her tea and feed the cat when there was a knock at her front door. Eunice was called on so infrequently that it actually startled her. She wasn't expecting any packages from UPS, and the cableman had been there the week prior. She sighed at the interruption, smoothed her housecoat, and walked to the door. "Who is it?" she asked dutifully as she peeked through the window beside the door to try and catch a glimpse of the person. "Police, ma'am. Would you mind opening the door?" "Police? Can you show me your badge at the window, please?" She peered through the window and a nondescript hand held a badge up to it. Eunice slid the deadbolt and turned the lock. She was just about to greet the officer when the door flew open violently, knocking Eunice back. A man entered, but he obviously wasn't a police officer. He slammed the door behind him and locked it as Eunice lay on the floor trying to regain her wits. She smelled old alcohol when he grabbed her by the housecoat and hoisted her to her feet. There was no face, there were no tall or short, there was nothing, just that smell. She ached everywhere, her heart was thudding in her chest, and she was pretty sure her left hand was broken. The man dragged her further into the house as she screamed for help. He rewarded her for her efforts with several hard slaps across the face, splitting her old lips and breaking the thin skin. Her eye was swelling shut as well. He threw her onto the couch and began pacing back and forth like a wild animal. "Money, bitch. Where's the money? Jewelry? Give it up, bitch, or I'm gonna kill you." His eyes were wild. He began to throw her knick-knacks. Glass was shattering everywhere. Eunice tried to explain that she didn't have any money, and that her little bit of jewelry was in the bedroom, but she couldn't get the words out. She just moaned. The man pounced on her and began to beat her savagely. The cat was waiting patiently when it heard the crashes and the screams coming from inside the house. It raised its tail and began to pace back and forth slowly at first, but then more violently. It knew something was wrong. It knew the lady was in trouble. It knew it was going to help. The cat ran down the stairs and backed up towards the overgrown garage that was at the far end of the unused driveway. The cat then took off at a run towards the back door. It seemed to pick up a great deal of speed as it reached the bottom of the back porch steps and leapt into the air. The cat's front paws struck the back door with an incredible amount of force, causing it to rip from its hinges and fall to the kitchen floor. The cat standing on top of it was huffing hard. It let out a low, deep guttural growl and tore through the kitchen into the living room. The man had been beating poor Eunice so badly that she barely resembled a human being anymore. Most of her ribs were broken, her teeth gone, both eye sockets, and her nose crushed. His hands were around her throat to finish her off when a black streak flew through the air and landed on the man's head. The man screamed as the cat's claws grew to outrageous talon-like proportions and dug into the flesh of his cheeks and neck. He forgot about Eunice for the moment, and began to grab at the cat, tugging at it violently, but the cat was not moving. The man tripped over the coffee table and fell backwards as he tried to remove the cat from his head. The cat wasn't finished with him yet. It shoved its head into the man's mouth, followed by the front paws, and began to force itself down the man's throat. The man gagged and struggled and tried to pull the cat out of his mouth, a large lump growing in his throat as the cat moved down his esophagus, leaving only the crooked end of its tail sticking from the man's mouth. He gasped for air, and could feel the cat's seemingly massive claws slice through his innards and then dig into his heart. The man's eyes went wide in disbelief and considerable pain as the cat shredded his still beating heart into a bloody, stringy mess. The man died, his face fixed in a mask of horror. The tip of the cat's tail slid out of view and the man's stomach bulged as the cat cut its way through, emerging as if reborn. Its black fur shiny and slick with blood and pieces of meat. The cat left the carcass of the man and moved over towards Eunice. Eunice had no idea what was going on, only that the man had stopped hitting her. She tried to take a deep breath, but the pain in her chest was horrific. It began to radiate down her arm. Her heart was thundering in her chest. She became vaguely aware of the cat when it jumped onto her chest and stared down at her. It nuzzled its blood-stained face against hers as if to reassure her, but Eunice knew she was dying, or was she? The cat placed its mouth on hers and meowed 3 times. Eunice's breath grew even shallower, and the cat meowed 3 more times. Eunice took a deep breath, and when she exhaled white smoke from her mouth and nose. The body that housed what was Eunice Shinkick stopped. The white cloud it had exhaled slowly landed next to the body and began to coalesce and solidify. The black cat watched intently as the cloud shimmered and throbbed and slowly took the form of a cat. The newly formed cat, a white Persian with blue eyes, looked around the room, and then at the black cat sitting on the lump of flesh that was Eunice. The white cat meowed. The black cat meowed in response, and the two of them padded through the living room into the kitchen, down the steps of the back porch, and off towards who knows really.